Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Catholit Podcast. In a very special episode this week, we have the pro-life episode. We're discussing the ways that the pro-life movement factors into young people's understanding of their Catholic faith. With me today, I have three very good friends, three very distinguished officers of the Crusaders for Life Club on the campus of the University of Dallas. Kateri Remis, the president of Crusaders for Life, Sam Skinner, the Prayerful Presence Officer for Crusaders for Life, and Aaron Quinn, the Publicity Officer for Crusaders for Life. Why don't you say hi to everybody, guys?
Hello. Hi.
Hey there.
All right. So we're going to start from the top with you guys. We're going to start with like kind of your pro-life experience. How's it been so far, I guess? But the first thing I wanted to kind of get out of the way so that everybody knows, how long have you all kind of been involved with the pro-life movement? And this is like very subjective. So just whenever you think that it was like the first time that you were really involved in this. Kateri, president, please start us off.
Yeah. So I was raised pro-life, but I didn't actually become actually involved on my own until high school, when my friend at the public high school started a club, and I was homeschooled, but he let me go to the meetings and help out with their events and stuff. So that was my first real jump in.
Cool. I had a similar thing. It was just sort of I was raised Catholic, and so I was pro-life, but we didn't do a whole lot. And it actually wasn't until, sophomore year of college that I really started to go to things, and Kateri helped me get involved and sort of put me in charge, and helped her out with running Prayerful Presence. And so that's why I ran for this year. Just because it's awesome. Finally taking it seriously, thinking about what we're talking about. There's only one thing to do, and that's get involved, because it's such a weighty issue.
Absolutely. Aaron?
I've definitely been involved in the pro-life movement my whole life. I can remember when I was little going to a Life Chain event, which is where you stand on the street with a bunch of other pro-life leaders or just people and holding signs as in a chain. But I remember that day, that was my first interaction really with the opposition. And there was a man that came and screamed at me because I was young, and he was screaming at my mom for quote unquote brainwashing me. And I remember from that day on being like, this is my choice. I am pro-life because of myself and not because my mom is forcing me to do anything. So it's one of my best pro-life memories.
Yeah, that's a really powerful experience. I think a lot of the best kind of people that, are very passionate about what they do is born out of opposition like that. Yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you. I mean, I don't think people shouting in people's faces should be condoned anywhere. So
funny story, he was actually working for a pizza shop at the time, and he was a driver for a pizza shop, and we called the pizza shop and we said, excuse me, your worker is opposing us on the street right now. And that day he was actually fired because the pizza shop was pro-life and they didn't want someone pro-choice representing them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, pulling out the big guns.
Right.
It was awesome.
I mean, he got himself into it. I mean, you just shouldn't be shouting at people, especially if you're on the job.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that in your free time. All right. So what pro-life organizations outside of Crusaders for Life? I don't want to diminish the impact of Crusaders for Life, but it's a campus kind of it's on the university campus. So it's kind of more limited to kind of us at the UD community. But any other kind of pro-life organizations have you guys been involved with?
So I got involved right leading into college with Students for Life. We were hosting a camp at the school near my house in high school called Joshua Camp. It was a pro-life training boot camp for young high schoolers. And a guy from Students for Life, one of the regional coordinators, he stayed at my family's house and was telling me all about the different ways to get involved. And he connected me with the president of Crusaders for Life in Dallas and set that up for me. And then helped me get into a fellowship program with Students for Life, which was really huge. And they flew us out to DC and we had all these different trainings. So Students for Life is the one that like I'm mainly involved in, and then Texas Right to Life also has a scholarship fellowship program, and they've been recruiting really awesome like a big group of different leaders from all over the state of Texas, and giving us projects to do, and we like get scholarship money, which is really nice. But they've been really helpful as well, and I've loved being involved with them.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Sam. Or Aaron, yeah. Go ahead, Aaron.
Before I came to college, I worked a little bit with Advice and Aid Pregnancy Center, just to kind of work with them, donating stuff from my high school and my church. But then since college, I have gotten a lot more involved with Texas Right to Life, like Kateri, and Students for Life of America. I'm in 2 fellowships right now. One for Students for Life. It's for Christian schools, pro-life leaders at Christian schools, because they really see a need for strong pro-life leaders in Christian schools, because people think that people are not having abortions if they are Catholic or if they are Christian, but that is quite contrary to many of the statistics. So that's where they started that fellowship.
Yeah, and my involvement is really mostly with SFLA, and it's really just through Crusaders for Life. That's when I began to get involved, and it's like I don't know what you call it, a satellite or whatever. It's affiliated with Students for Life, and so I got in contact with the regional coordinator, and I actually have been given the opportunity to do this new fellowship that they just started, which is really cool. It's run out of Florida. And yeah, that's most of this stuff I've been involved in. I want to in the future go and volunteer at a pregnancy resource center that we have here called Birth Choice, but I haven't gotten around to that yet, so that's in the cards.
You speak a bit more about that fellowship, that new fellowship as SFLA shout out?
Yeah, so it's called Invictus, and it just started this year. It's a men's fellowship, and sort of the point of it is to there's tons of really strong, really dynamic women in the pro-life movement, and a lot of guys who sort of not picking up their slack, and it takes both men and women to win this fight. And so that's sort of what the point of the fellowship is to help guys develop the apologetic skills to know how to deal with people that say, well, you don't have a uterus, you don't have anything to say on abortion. It's like, if you haven't been told how to respond to that, how do you? That's I don't know. So that's just started, and it's really amazing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very worthwhile endeavor. This is I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's this isn't really just a women's fight; it's a fight for life, which is, I don't think that's exclusive to a gender or a race or a culture. I think that's a commonality that all of us humans share, is that we are alive. So protecting that gift that God has given us is its responsibility extends to all of us. So the topic of this conversation, of course, is to kind of connect involvement with the pro-life movement with the Catholic faith. Now, the Catholic Church, of course, holds that abortion is wrong, morally wrong. But I think a lot of people, especially a lot of so-called Catholics, hold positions to the contrary for many reasons. But for you guys personally, how does being pro-life connect to your faith? Anybody can start us off. Y'all can go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that it is connected in as far as the church, is very pro-life, but they're pro-life because they hold the truth, which is not, something that you can only get if you're Catholic or Christian. I think that, really the fight for life is really just a matter of logic and common sense, and any secular group can come to the realization that murder should be wrong. There's plenty of atheists out there that say that they don't want to be killed, or that they don't think murder is right, even if they don't think that it's based in God, because I guess that's what I would say about that. That it's bigger, or it's more universal than just a specific sect.
Right.
I agree with that, but I'd also go to the point that because the Catholic Church believes that all life is worthwhile and has dignity, that really impacts how I see my pro-life beliefs, and that follows with being anti-birth control as well, of all sorts, because that includes the contraception side rather than just anti-abortion. We are pro-human life from conception to natural death. So,
yeah, I think I agree with Sam. I know some pro-life atheists who have been like really strong logical thinkers and have been able to argue and articulate their thing. Sorry, have been able to argue for the pro-life side, not based on God, which is super interesting and I think needed for a lot of people. But I will say that for me personally, having the faith as a like almost like a backup, like it's there for me when I like all my other arguments fail. It's like I know I can trust their judgment, and it's helped me become stronger in my own like pro-life convictions just because I have that faith in them as well. So I don't know if I would be as involved now. I mean, I'm sure I would come to the truth. I hope I would eventually, but I think the faith has really helped me to grasp those pro-life views. And then also I think it's like I'm very thankful to be Catholic and a Christian in this sense, just because like there is so much that you can do with prayer for the pro-life movement. And sure. I love having that ability to use that and like have faith that my prayers are working, or at least they're helping in some way when I can't just argue with people or try and help women at a pregnancy center. So it's, I mean, I like that aspect a lot.
Yeah, very well said. From everybody, yeah. I think that point that you brought up is very interesting, that the pro-life movement, of course, encapsulates a lot more than just Christians that talking about God and how it's wrong in God's eyes to kill people, and also as atheists, right, that are arguing for this from a standpoint that doesn't rely on that. I think that's ultimately, at least in my opinion, ultimately the pro-life kind of issue leads back to the truth, which, like Sam said, is that life is a God-given, is a gift from God, and that's like at the end of the day, that's probably the most important reason, at least to me, that we should preserve it, because it's God's gift to us. It's not for us to do what we want with it. But I think there's avenues to get there, and I think definitely a lot of people, like, to come to one location, there are a lot of roads. So I think it's definitely one road that needs to be explored. Have you had any experience with like talking to people like that?
I've had brief interactions with one woman. She works for the pro-life group in San Francisco. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. But she's a really dynamic, like very thoughtful person. And I don't know all of her arguments. I don't remember them off the top of my head. But I remember finding it so amazing that she could come to the truth, at least for the pro-life movement, and like have very good arguments from a non-religious standpoint. Because I mean, ultimately, like even if we're not able to lead someone to the full truth, like she is able to reach out to those who aren't faith-based and help them save lives. And I think that she was just amazing to me.
I have listened and spoken with several women that are / created the New Wave Feminists, which is an organization about the New Wave feminism. And they are a completely secular group, so they are not affiliated with any religion, but they come at it from the women's standpoint, where abortion is completely dehumanizing to women, and saying that we are machines, that this great gift that we are given from birth to be able to have children, men can just make us take that away, if that makes any sense. And that often that is the reason why women have abortions, is because they are pressured from someone. And so New Wave feminists come in and say that it's not just because of a religious standpoint, but it is because of the dignity of women, and that they should be able to make that decision.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, absolutely. Sam, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, the only experience that I've really had is just sometimes like tabling events. You'll get like people that'll come up and say sort of, essentially that, like, hey,
Mhm.
I'm atheist, or I'm agnostic, or I don't really know, but I still think that, what you have to say is great. And sometimes you'll have like a conversation, but I haven't had the same kind of interactions that Kateri and Aaron have.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that because I think, like I mentioned before, many roads in one location, which is obviously the truth. And I think it's especially in the mainstream media, it's portrayed as a bunch of religious fundamentalists that are coming and trying to take control of people through like some sort of like, mind control idea, which, as you guys have stated, is really not the case. A lot of people like that aren't religious, that don't believe in God, have come to the conclusion that we don't want this. This is not good for us, right? And it's definitely I think a voice that's ignored a lot in the discussion for this, which is that. Another question I kind of have on that point: do you think that the pro-life topic is something that can be used, maybe not used, I think use is too strong of a word, but can be an avenue for a lot of people to come to faith in God?
Oh, I would say yes. I think this is something that I've been trying to really work with, as as the peripheral presence officer, like in charge of this, this, I don't know if you call it a ministry, where we go and we pray outside the abortion clinic.
It could be called a ministry. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
So this, well, we go and we pray outside and we offer sidewalk counseling, and but there's always this one guy there, and we call him the bloody surgeon, and he dresses up in scrubs that are all bloody and stuff, and has these very graphic signs. But like what I always try to tell our group that goes out there is like we need to not be that. Like, we're here to pray. We're here to be a witness to human dignity. We're here to be a witness to the love of God, and we're here to be a witness to life. And like that's how we're going to change minds, and that's how we're going to change hearts. And I think that like if that's the approach of the pro-life movement, then yes, we'll have people converting. But that's not even really necessarily the point. But like we'll have them maybe we'll have them converting to Catholicism. Who knows? Fingers crossed. But like we'll be having them, change their minds and hearts about the abortion issue. So I guess that's how I'd respond to that.
Yeah, and I think you hear a lot, at least I have, of a lot of different pro-life speakers who used to be pro-choice, and the majority of them I found have said that they've converted to Catholicism. And a lot of the pro-life leaders out there right now, because their belief in the dignity of life is so rooted in faith, like they are some of the strongest pro-life leaders that we have right now. And so when you get involved in the pro-life movement, especially like as a sidewalk counselor, or you're getting more involved in actual activism and volunteering, you find a lot of the times that they're run by Catholics or at least other Christians. So a lot of the people who are pro-choice, they will have some affiliation with God, if not convert fully. I mean, most of the sidewalk counseling will hand out pamphlets, and they're Christian based. And so a lot of them will, talk about how they are loved by Christ, and they're very loving. And I think that it touches a lot of people and makes them feel really cared about. And when they see that goodness that shines through like the Catholics and the Christians, who are the predominant people who are pro-life, that it inspires them, and they want to be a part of that loving culture. Mm-hmm. So that is my take on it.
Aaron, anything to add?
You basically hit everything.
Didn't leave any points for you, huh?
We're getting a little greedy.
That's a really encouraging kind of answers from you guys. As somebody that, as a theology major and somebody who hopes to work in ministry, I think it's encouraging to hear that this is something that can help people understand not only this issue, but also kind of faith and its own right a little bit, better. And it's not like, it's not, you can approach it less from a place of suspicion and more from this place of understanding, which is, I think, in my opinion, as a minister, I think it's the least that I can ask for out of somebody that, it holds an opposing view. All right, so let's move on to the next kind of section of the podcast. This is fun. I'm going to ask for unfiltered, opinions that you have that you have never told anybody else in your life. Right. So the first.
Now you're about to post them on the internet. What?
This is, yeah. Tread carefully, yeah. First question I kind of have in this section is, what do you believe, as a whole? Not only is I've asked already how being pro-life connects to your faith, but what do you believe is the relationship between the pro-life movement and the faith? If you need clarification, I can offer a little bit too.
I would say that, the Catholic Church, 100% is behind the movement. I think that it's, there's not really any real debate within the teaching of the church about the importance of it, the dignity of human life, like Aaron was saying. And I mean, the Catholic Church has been the forerunner of this since the beginning. The year after Roe v. Wade was, passed, it was a bunch of Catholics out there marching on Washington. And I think it's grown.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What do y'all have to say about that?
I feel like the church, they're 100% against abortion. And so I don't think they have a bad relationship with pro-lifers in general. I know that within different pro-life groups and advocates, there could be some discrepancy, especially with certain Protestants who don't fully understand how contraceptions can be abortifacients. And it's nice as Catholics, since we're already against contraception, we don't really struggle with that view, which is really, really nice. Whereas sometimes birth control acts as an abortifacient if it doesn't actually prevent ovulation. That's its main goal, which is great, or not great. I'm sorry. Its main goal is to prevent ovulation. So it wouldn't actually act as an abortifacient, but it can. So if ovulation does happen, which is a small chance, it alters the lining of the uterus and doesn't allow the baby to implant. And so the baby dies. And so I know of some different pro-life groups who claim that that is okay. Using birth control is fine, and will recommend them at certain pregnancy centers. And so I think that there could be a stronger relationship in certain ways of dialoguing between Catholics and Protestants in the pro-life movement and building that up so that people are more educated and understand. Because right now it's easy as Catholics in pregnancy centers to just say no, we don't recommend any abortifacients, natural family planning or fertility-based methods. But I think sometimes it can be hard to dialogue when there is that little discrepancy within the pro-life movement.
Right.
The Catholic Church really doesn't leave a lot of room for confusion. It's pretty consistent in the pro-life movement all the way around. Like Terry was saying, how we do not agree with contraception whatsoever across the board. And that really, like I said, doesn't leave people confused. We understand if you can understand what a contraceptive actually does, then you can understand why the Catholic Church doesn't agree with it. And I really love that about our faith, because some other Christian faiths do, like Terry said, promote almost artificial contraception, and that could get confusing for a lot of people. I could see that, because they would say, well, if you know what actually happens in some of those abortifacients, then why is abortion wrong? So that's what I love about the Catholic faith, remaining consistent and across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think y'all have hit the nail on the head there. There's very little language in the catechism that is not definitive when it comes to especially abortion and contraception, as well as other kind of matters that kind of, like premarital sex and things like this, that also kind of invite, I guess, I don't know if you'd call it a chain, but kind of the cause and effect of a lot of things, so the Catholic Church really puts it across the board, like the act of abortion is wrong, act of contraception is wrong, act of premarital sex is wrong, and a lot of these things, I think you can find a lot of places that will say no to one thing but yes to another. And I think, like you guys said, it's a refreshing quality. To make sure that our church isn't wishy-washy on any of these types of things, but upholds the dignity of human life across the board. Second question: is there anything that concerns you? And I want you guys to kind of take yourselves out of the pro-life kind of organizations that you're involved with, and kind of look at this squarely from somebody that sits in the pews every Sunday. Is there anything that would concern you as a Catholic about the current state of the pro-life movement?
I guess that I don't know. As a Catholic, I guess I would say that, like, one thing that I would, like to see more of in the movement just in general, and this applies maybe not just strictly as a Catholic, but as somebody who values the movement, is seeing these groups work together more. They're all doing really good work. And some of them are working together. And like, there was just this really awesome summit that they had in DC after the March for Life this year. And it was, it was put on by Students for Life and the Heritage Foundation and Live Action. And they were all working together, and they did this huge thing and brought in some wonderful speakers. And so that was amazing, like, to really see this, see this movement within the pro-life cause towards, working together. And maybe I would have a stronger sense of that because I'm part of the universal church. But yeah, so I don't know. That's a really difficult question.
No softballs on the Catholit Podcast, Sam. You should have known that coming in.
Yeah, I should have known.
Yeah, you got to have the bat. You got to get it off your shoulders. You got to swing at it. I'll let you think about it a bit more. If any of you ladies have anything to offer, you can come back to Sam and see if he's thought of anything else.
I do appreciate in the pro-life movement how they try to incorporate the Catholic Church in it. And every March for Life, at the rally before the march, they typically have a Catholic priest, a bishop, or maybe a Greek Orthodox priest on the stage, leading us in prayer before we all go to march or before the rally even starts. And that really is a beautiful thing that they are able to incorporate. Even though it can be a secular movement, they do understand that the Catholic Church is very much passionate about the movement, and so they do welcome all prayer.
All right. It's Terry. Anything you got to offer there?
Not really. I mean, I guess just more unity and maybe more discussion within parishioners and engaging them as communities and getting them more involved. But I don't think that that's necessarily a problem within the Catholic Church as it is with every church or any community itself. So I don't really have a big answer for that. No.
Sam, anything else after taking a little bit more time for it? No?
No, just sort of I mean, I would support what Aaron said, and
Okay, yeah, no, that's definitely fine. The reason that I bring that up is that after actually, I should probably make this kind of clear. All of us were part of the Crusaders for Life trip to the March for Life this past January. So we were actually at the Pro Life Summit, and we're actually, at the march, and it's a fantastic opportunity. Again, very thankful that we had the chance to be there. But when I came back, of course, I'm on the whole pro life kick, right? I want to talk about everything that happened in DC and how cool it was. And I took this and I was discussing with a few of my friends that are pastoral ministry majors, and I was talking about the Pro Life Summit, right? And I mentioned a couple of things. I mentioned like the organizations that were involved, and one of my friends mentioned to me that he was he prefaced it by saying, I'm pro-life, obviously, as a Catholic, I can't, hold any other stance, and taking it independently, I think that abortion is wrong. But he said that he would personally, as somebody that's looking to get into ministry and talk to people in the church and outside of the church, he told me that he really had a lot of issues with the fact that it seemed to him that the pro-life movement leans very conservative in this time, and that as a result, it can be a huge turnoff for people that are not conservative in their political views to be involved in that movement, because I feel like if I get involved in this, then that means that I support this person that I don't support. And as a result, now my conscience is a little bit, iffy in that sense. And he told me basically he was like, I want to work in ministry. So it's like, I want to be able to talk to everybody. And, if there's something that blocks somebody from talking to me, then that means I don't get to talk to them. And then, that person obviously has, never hears about the faith. Which is obviously incredibly important, right? Mm-hmm. in our day and age to evangelize in that sense. I don't know. What would you guys say to kind of ease the mind of my friend who's a little bit on the fence about getting involved?
I would say I know of quite a few people who are pro-life Democrats, and I think that's a really difficult position to hold. They are definitely under a lot of attack from most liberal Democrats for having that position. So all the more power to those people who are willing to do that. But that being said, I think that if the man who's in ministry is able to really open up to his peers and explain his position more, I think that it could carry more weight. Because even if you're a conservative, or even if you're pro-life and that makes you seem like a conservative, that is still a good place to be, because right at the moment, the dignity of human life and defending human life is the most important issue of our day. I mean, the amount of children lost to abortion is just horrendous, and that should be the main concern of the people. And those people who are pro-life, that should, they shouldn't negate those thoughts and say other things are more important than that. And so when voting, sometimes if you have more Democratic leaning tendencies, you have to kind of evaluate what is the most important. Is voting for this Republican, even if I don't agree with everything he says, can I set those aside for the preborn? Mm-hmm. Can I set those views aside for the greater good at the moment of saving thousands of babies? And I'm not saying to vote Republican. I know that there are pro-life Democrats out there who are willing to step up in legislation and work. I mean, they're rare and hard to find, but they exist, and we need more people like that on that side. But I think that if you're coming across from a point of no, this is the greatest issue of our life, and the way I'm gonna vote is so strictly based on that, I think that can open up a little bit more dialogue between the other people, and you can talk about issues between the different parties. But as long as you're open and honest about your position, I think that it's hard. It'd be a real shame if the other person on the other side wasn't willing to listen and hear your thoughts on that and to isolate them. But yeah. I don't know if that was
no,
a good explanation.
Absolutely. You guys have anything else to offer? Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I guess I would just going off of what Kateri was saying, I would encourage your friend to like, the reason the pro-life movement is seen as conservative is because lots and lots of conservatives think that this is important, and so they're primarily the ones marching. But it really is a bipartisan issue. Like, if you don't want it to be conservative, like a conservative standpoint or something that labels you like that, then get all of your friends that are Democrat or liberal, like, be out there marching. And then there won't be this, like, I guess stigma on it or something. Like, if that's something you're trying to avoid or something you disagree with, like, it doesn't have to be like that. It's just they're the only ones to show up. So, yeah.
Yes, it's a simple issue there. It's show up. That's a good answer. Aaron?
And there are some big groups like Democrats for Life. I know that they've got a pretty good following. Sorry, that's just a side note.
Yeah.
Funny story. This past quarantine, before everyone was restricted to their houses, Illinois had a primary, I believe, for the president, and they were asking students to call people in the state of Illinois to vote for the pro-life Democrat. And I made the decision to get on the phones one morning and call people that were registered to vote as Democrats and ask them simply straight out, do you believe that you will vote pro-life this election? And then follow up with a few other questions about, do you see the dignity of human life or something such as that? And it was very encouraging, but also discouraging, because many of the people that were registered to vote as Democrat had not decided to vote for the pro-life candidate, which was slightly disappointing, but it's still something you have to keep getting out there and spreading the word, even to Democrats. So like Sam said, often conservatives are the people that are maybe on the camera or put in front of the camera, because like Kateri said, there's a lot of Democratic pro-life people, and they're just not maybe in the limelight quite as often.
Yeah, very good points all around, guys. Yeah, I have to say I wasn't taken aback when I kind of talked about this, I was surprised by how much I agreed with what he was saying, especially talking to somebody, of course, that was looking to get in the same kind of career. So it made me kind of consider the issue from that point of view. Is like, maybe for a lot of people, if that even involvement in the movement can be that kind of turnoff. But I think I think y'all made a very good point into saying it's like, if you are open with your views and you're open to sharing with people, and I guess like you said, is an understanding frame of mind to where you can talk to somebody like that. I think the fault doesn't lie on you for being involved in what you were involved in, but with the person that was is turned off by it. There's more to the whole thing than just what somebody did or is involved in or is a part of. So I think yeah, very very well said. I think it's something I'm gonna keep thinking about, as a ministry major. All right, then for the next question, I was actually doing a little bit of research, and shocker, Germ does research for his episodes. But I came across an article on the National Catholic Reporter titled "I'm a Pro-Choice Catholic," and I read through it, and I'm not going to say that I agree or disagree with what the person said. What I am going to say is that for somebody that's coming at this issue and trying to see a way to where, you can kind of hold a pro-choice view as a Catholic, it's a convincing argument, I have to say, because she does. The author cites a couple of passages from Thomas Aquinas that I was actually privy to in my systematics and systematics 2 classes. And one of the things that she kind of said is this: she ended off with, I'm a pro-choice Catholic because my Catholic faith tells me I can be. Catechism reads that conscience is man's most secret core and his sanctuary. There he is alone with God, whose voice echoes in his depths. Even St. Thomas Aquinas said it would be better to be excommunicated than to neglect your individual conscience. So she's saying that she's done her research, she's kind of informed her opinion, and so she says that, at least in her own view, it would go against her conscience to hold a pro-life view, I guess. So my question to you guys there is, do you believe that that people can, in good conscience, hold, and be a pro-choice Catholic?
I don't. And quite frankly, I don't know. I haven't studied St. Thomas Aquinas, so I don't know like all of his arguments and what she says in this article.
That's fine.
But my first thought is your conscience is good for those situations in which you don't know the truth. And the Catholic Church is very clear on its stance on abortion, and you should have faith in that because it is church teaching. But when you have that conscious feeling, like when you're not sure about a certain thing, like if you're not sure what to do in a situation, you don't have outlets like the church to go to, maybe in that instance, and you have to make a decision, then I think that you are required to use your conscience and try and make the best decision you can. But that's when you don't have the truth available to you and you don't have the resource of learning the truth right off the bat. Then I think, yeah, your conscience is your best guide. But right there, I don't think that's a good argument.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Sam, Aaron?
Yeah, I think that it's many people, and I can't speak to the article that you're talking about. Many people that say, like, I'm personally pro-life, but that's okay, which is a little bit different from what you're talking about. Like, a lot of times it's kind of like misinformation, and like not really understanding what the issue is. Because if you're to say that it's not actually a human in the womb, then there's not a lot of people that are going to fuss with you about it. Like, if it's true that it's not a person, then abortion's not murder. And, maybe from the Catholic standpoint of contraception being wrong, you would still say it was wrong, but it's not murder. And so sometimes people, like, I don't know about this specific person, but might have missed the whole issue, which is that science says that it is like a distinct person, and you're killing it. And so the church is pretty clear on that. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that.
I mean, kind of going back to my point earlier, the Catholic Church doesn't really leave a lot of room for confusion in this part. They respect the dignity of human life from conception to natural death. And if you don't agree with that, then I have a difficult time understanding how you can be Catholic and pro-life, because as a Catholic, you choose to respect all human life, but then you somehow are able to argue that this scientifically proven procedure, which murders babies on a daily basis, you are promoting that personally. It's difficult to wrap your head around.
Yeah, I think there's also more to just going off of your conscience. You still have to cultivate a good conscience. And the way to do that within the Catholic Church is to read and to learn about what the Catholic Church believes. Otherwise, you don't have a formed conscience. You have gut feelings, but that doesn't take any account into like the morality of a situation. And you need the moral teachings to formulate that conscience. And it seems to me that woman is basing it more off of a gut feeling than like what she's learned like through morality. And I haven't read the article, so I may be wrong about that. But it seems like that from what you've been telling me. And I think it is really hard. And this is something that, the church and, everyone could do better on, is educating people, because I feel like in this case, when she's talking about her conscience, in her conscience, she feels like she can't say that she's pro-life. It seems to me that she just doesn't understand like true love within the pro-life movement, because a lot of the time people who should have a pro-life view and are basically there with it, the reason they're held back from actually professing a pro-life view is they feel like abortion is a merciful act and something that's loving, especially when the child could be born into like druggy parents or homelessness or poverty, and they don't want that, and that's something you shouldn't want the child to go through that suffering, and so in their heads it is a loving option, and I think that's the root of it, which is a good thing. It's just twisted, and that's where you need the Catholic Church to form your moral conscience, because it's like they're so close, they just don't they're not fully on that loving track.
Yeah, well said. I think reading back through the article a little bit more, I had it open in my browser here just to make sure I was quoting from it correctly. I think the biggest thing, at least for the author of this article, in her decision to be a pro-choice Catholic, I guess, was I guess the dangers of illegal abortion, and that's why she would want safe and legal abortion, so that there's not danger to the woman and stuff like that. But she goes further. She's many other things. She's like, it says, being pro-choice does not end at supporting the right to safe and legal abortion. It extends to discovering the best methods to prevent unintended pregnancies, contraceptive promotion, comprehensive sexuality education, and access to affordable childcare and healthcare are just some of the methods that are paramount to reducing the need for abortion. That kind of reminds me of a lot of things that I've heard people say, is that like, I'll be pro-life when people don't need abortion anymore. Which it's a dubious kind of statement in its own right, but I can understand what they say. It's like, well, the procedure is ugly, but I don't like it. But it's like, we need it, I guess, right now. I don't know.
Really quick, sorry to touch on that article. The other day I was on a phone call and Abby Johnson was speaking to us, and she told us how the pro-choice movement has changed their argument throughout history. And the argument used to be, we want safe and legal abortion, but they no longer use that argument because it's irrational, because abortion is not a safe procedure, no matter if it's legal or if it's done in a back alley. Both are very dangerous procedures to a woman's life, and obviously the baby, because it is murdering the child. But that quote that you just read, it said safe and legal abortions. And for her to say that in general is misguided, because abortion is not safe no matter the circumstances. And so starting at that quote, I feel that maybe she is a little misled in what an abortion is. And I didn't read the whole article, but just hearing that little section, I think that she might need to go into depth a little more to understand that abortion is killing a child and can be very harmful to a woman.
Right. If things aren't safe, I don't think they should be legal.
Exactly.
I think that's a very good way of thinking of it. And then at least I'll touch on a couple other points on this. The article kind of confuses me because it's very contrary to Catholic teaching on a lot of things. It says promotion of contraception, sexuality education, and access to affordable childcare and healthcare. I think we can agree that's probably a Catholic position. But the first two is just, first of all, I think the Catholic Church already has very good sexual education in NFP, right? When we go to marriage prep, you're educated on this kind of procedure to make sure that prevents, I guess, unintended pregnancies. it's a little baffling to me that the author can claim to have read through and prayed about this and discerned. Because if you're reading anything Catholic, I think very much is promoted. A lot of the things that she says are not.
Yeah, it feels picky and choosy. Like she was trying to find little things to like affirm her own position, but not actually like taking them in the right context. Which is so unfortunate because like she's right there. I mean, she's taking an effort of like writing for the Catholic news reporter. I don't remember which one what you said it was.
National Catholic Reporter, yeah.
Like, so close.
Yeah, we definitely pray for her.
Mm-hmm.
So we do here in the Catholit Podcast. We pray for the lost to be led home.
Misinformed.
All right, the last question in this section is kind of, again, a little bit of a personal opinion. What does being pro-life mean to you guys, personally?
I would say that really it's just, well, we've iterated this a number of times. It's just sort of like that it's really the importance or understanding the importance of and the dignity of human life from like all of it. So the preborn and, and also fighting against euthanasia and stuff, just like that. All of mankind has dignity, and it doesn't matter what stage of development or age or size or disability. You have dignity and you have value because you're human. And so I'm going to fight to protect that.
Yeah. It's hard to encapsulate like what it means to me with just like a couple here and there terms because it encapsulates so much of, well, it is life in general, like of life. The only reason that we're here is because we have life. And that's the only way we can grow closer to God and the only way we can help the world. It's through life in general. If we don't have the right to life, what do we have? And so for me, it's everything. It is encapsulated in my faith. Just everyday life in general. Like it means so much. I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, it's a big one. Aaron?
Pretty much the same what Sam and Kateri had said before. Really respecting the dignity of all human life and trying throughout every action and every word that you say to ensure that people know that you respect all humans. And I've heard some argue that quote unquote pro-life people often can be seen in the workplace as cruel or as mean or and they say that that's contrary. And so to me, being pro-life is being consistent in your actions and in your words and being kind to all people and throughout all parts of your life.
Yeah. Moving on from that, this is something I really wanted to touch on with you guys is, I guess, being pro-life in the Catholic sense. I think like Sam said, we've made a very big point of saying that it's respecting the dignity of human life from conception to natural death. However, I think the big thing, at least nowadays, the abortion issue, the pro-life movement is can be painted as an anti-abortion campaign. So what are some suggestions you have to ways that you can expand this conversation with people beyond just the abortion issue? Because I know that a lot of people will take it away from the abortion issue to try to, fight people on the pro-life cause.
Yeah, I think that like the other main issue, right, is with euthanasia of the elderly. That's the other one that I hear about the most. And luckily, we don't really allow that yet. And so it's not, like really the one that we have to work to fight against is to like get rid of Roe v. Wade and, have abortion abolished for sure. But it is very concerning to see how there are a lot of people that are beginning to argue that people should have the right to die, which is incredibly disturbing. And I think that, like, my very quick response, if somebody were to ask me about this, would be just to point out that, like, if you have the right to die, it wouldn't stay that way. It would end up being the duty to die. That, like, if you feel like you're a burden on your family, it would be your duty to be euthanized so that you weren't draining their resources, so you weren't taking their time. And that's like, yeah. So I don't really know. I think luckily we haven't gotten there yet, but I think you're right in saying that we should definitely address it so that we don't ever get there.
Preemptive strike.
Mm-hmm.
Very good point. Kateri, Aaron, anything you have to offer?
I agree with Sam on this. Like, there's obviously so many things that we could talk about within that, and that, like, going past, like, abortion into euthanasia and just celebrating a dignity of all human life. You can see, like, it's such a slippery slope to have those thoughts, like, on euthanasia and abortion. And you can see how, like, the abortion movement has tied into eugenics and the practice of that. And so there's so many issues that can stem from abortion and this, like, lack of dignity for human life. So I think promoting and having people be more educated on what this means, all the depths of it within the celebration of human dignity. Like, I think that's the most important thing.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something Sam said is very, very correct in that sense. Is that thankfully we haven't gotten there yet, and hopefully we'll never get to the point where we're discussing euthanasia in a widespread manner, and that we don't have to fight against it the way that we've had against abortion. I think another issue, however, is that people will bring up, and it may be a little bit outside the pro-life conversation, but I think it does extend to what we've been talking about when we discuss the dignity of life, is that for many people, like, the quality of their lives, I guess, is subpar. And this is kind of what we see with, like, welfare programs, and I think the Democrat position on healthcare, right, is that a lot of people, their quality of life is diminished because of that. And I think it could be feasibly argued that as a pro-life movement that respects the dignity of life, that there's a responsibility to kind of seek solutions to these problems. Would you guys say that that's true or false?
I think that's a true argument. I've definitely heard people say that, especially with children with disabilities in the womb, them saying, like, this person has severe Down syndrome, and we don't want to bring them into the world because it's going to be really hard and it's going to be full of suffering for them. When in actuality, that's a choice that we have no authority to make. We can't say whether that person has a bad quality of life or if they're going to be unhappy. Ultimately, I feel like it is a more selfish response to it. I mean, it's more from the sake of, like, you being afraid to take care of a child who has Down syndrome. And I'm not negating that it is scary, but it is not at that point your choice whether or not you can give them up for adoption or you can take care of them, but it's not your choice to decide whether or not that person is going to be happy. I know so many, like, Down syndrome children who are, like, the most joyful children out there, and they're not sitting there thinking that they shouldn't have been alive. I don't hear many people say, wow, I have this deformation, I wish I was dead. Like,
right.
For the most part, I feel like that argument saying that it's a merciful act to bring them out of suffering is it's like a kick in the throat to them, because it's like saying, okay, you're looking at other disabled children and saying you should have been aborted. Like, your life isn't worth living, when in actuality, they had no way of knowing that. So I think ultimately it's a bad argument, but I also don't want to say that people who think that are on that level. I don't think internally a lot of them are thinking to themselves. I think it is like a fearful experience. So I don't want to say that like is a terrible. I think it has a tendency to have like a loving approach, in the sense that they don't want to bring someone into suffering, but it's just twisted, and it needs to be straightened out. And
right, the solution to the problem they're proposing is incorrect.
Exactly.
Yeah. Erin, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I very much agree with Kateri on the point that through that argument, they are stating that the life of people that are already born and have lived most of their life with disabilities, that they could and should have been aborted. I know people that do have disabilities, but they are still very much a part of society, and even family members of mine that have disabilities, but they still are a working part of society. And who is to say if someone is a part of society or not, is a working part of society? They are humans, and so hence they are part of our society. And I think their life is just as worthy to be lived as my own.
Very, very well said. It's a good sentiment, not thinking so much about like putting yourself in that position to kind of decide whether or not that person can live a life that's happy and full. I think for everybody, that's a choice that ultimately comes down to that one person who's in their own mind and living that life that they are living. Is whether it, you can choose to do a lot of things with your life, and I think we have the responsibility to give people the ability and the opportunity to make those choices with their life.
It's like the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It's like we have to give them life and the ability to live a life, that liberty, and then for them to be able to pursue happiness on their own. Like, we can't make that judgment for them. Sorry.
Yeah, whatever happened in the Constitution? It's a good document. Or the Declaration of Independence. I think I might have my wires crossed. Whatever. I'm a theology major and a politics major. It's okay. All right. We're coming up on about an hour, so I want to kind of wrap things up for you guys. And I use this in a little bit in my catechesis episodes, but I also want to give you guys the opportunity here to kind of speak to people that may be listening to this podcast that might want to be part of the pro-life movement, or just kind of interested in getting to know more about it. What are the best ways that you guys have to kind of do that?
I say get out there. There is constant need in the pro-life movement for more volunteers, more supporters, more financial supporters, but also more supporters just for women to have someone to talk to, or have a friend to just listen to them go through their difficulties. And so I'd say get in touch with your local pregnancy center, get in touch with your church, because I'm sure that they probably have a connection or know of someone that is in need of assistance in maybe a crisis pregnancy, or a mom who maybe recently became a single mother or a single father. And I literally just say get out there, because there's so much for you can do.
Yeah. Especially on a campus. If you it's great if you already have a pro-life club. It's super easy to get involved in those. And I mean, the University of Dallas, we're a Catholic school, and we're blessed to have Crusaders for Life be like the biggest club. But most clubs need a lot of help, and they need members who are able to stand up for the unborn. And so I think that's a really good way, along with Erin's, of getting involved. and forming your own thoughts.
True.
Sam, why don't you take us out with the closing statement here?
Yeah, no, I really just want to agree with the two ladies, especially like if you're not on a college campus, like what Aaron was saying about, checking in with your church and your local pregnancy centers because they always need volunteers. But yeah, it starts with like the personal level. Like you have to be acting pro-life, in your interactions with people and in people's hardships. Otherwise, you're being a hypocrite. So we're going to try to avoid that.
Oh, it's a sentiment I can agree with. I'm always trying to not be a hypocrite. Guys, thank you so much for being here and talking pro-life with me. I think this is an issue that is very near and dear to the hearts of many young Catholics across the nation. And I kind of wanted to talk about it with you guys because y'all are some of the best pro-life people that I know. So thanks again for coming on. And that is the end of this episode.
Hey there, loyal listener. To stay updated on the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on Spotify and Anchor. If you want to hear or read more from me, visit the Catholit blog page at catholit.weebly.com. Thanks for listening, and God bless.